Today's next message, we're still at the burning bush in Exodus chapter 3, and we read in Exodus chapter 3 and verse 2. We read that the angel of the Lord appeared to Moses, or to him, in a flame of fire from the midst of the bush. So he looked, and behold, the bush was burning with fire, but it was not consumed. Because we could think of two particular things from Exodus chapter 3 verse 2. The fact that the bush was burning, but it was not consumed. We remember what God said through Malachi: I am the Lord, I change not, therefore you sons of Jacob are not consumed. And that, in other words, the bush was symbolic of the nation of Israel, how they would be preserved by God and God's presence. And of course, fire in the Bible is always symbolic of God's presence. For example, Acts chapter 2, on the day of Pentecost, remember the Spirit came down, and it says that it was like tongues or tongues of fire. And that, of course, is symbolic of God's presence, the Holy Spirit coming and permanently indwelling the church, the early church, Acts chapter 2. And so we know that throughout the Bible that is consistent, that fire is symbolic of God's presence. But when we look at Exodus chapter 3 verse 2 and in the life of Moses, we see fire is very important. Here we see Exodus 3 verse 2, the angel of the Lord appeared to him in the flame of fire from the midst of the bush. The bush was burning with fire, but the bush was not consumed. And so we see the significance of fire. And when we go through the life of Moses, we see the importance of this theme. God appeared here in a fire to Moses. No doubt this was something that Moses remembered for the rest of his life. Later, of course, God led Israel in a similar way. We read in Exodus chapter 13 and verse 21, the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead the way. And of course, by night, he led them by a pillar of fire to give them light as to go day and night. And what I thought was significant was the very last verse of that chapter. He did not take away the pillar of cloud by day or the pillar of fire by night from before the people. So that pillar of fire by night and pillar of cloud by day guided God's people as they moved from place to place, as the tabernacle, as they picked up the tabernacle, moved it to the next place. It was fire at night time that guided God's people. Hebrews 12 verse 29 says, our God is a consuming fire. Fire purified, guided and protected God's people. Of course, on Mount Sinai, Exodus chapter 19 verse 18, Moses, God received the law from God, and Mount Sinai burned with fire, again symbolic of God's presence and the holiness and the glory of God. Then, of course, Leviticus chapter 9 verse 24, fire came down on the tabernacle when they offered that offering. And of course that was an amazing day. But sadly, and this is what we see throughout the Bible, whenever there is a great peak and a great victory in the Christian life, in the next chapter, of course, we read of the death of Nadab and Abihu because they offered strange fire. Again, another message about fire. The bush was burning but not consumed, symbolizing God's sustaining presence. God burns with holiness and passion, yet his mercy preserves. Lamentations 3 verse 22, through the Lord's mercies we are not consumed. God's fire reveals, purifies, sustains. His presence consumes sin, but not his people. And of course, when you looked at a few instances in the life of Moses, you could develop it just in the more general sense of fire being symbolic of God's presence. But for Moses, it was very significant. here at the burning bush, later with the pillar of fire by night, there on Mount Sinai when it burned with fire as God gave the law, and fire came down from the tabernacle, Leviticus chapter 9 and verse 24. So thank you for listening. Hope you have a good day, and let's remember that the God we serve is holy.